2008 World Champions of Baseball. And the Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh, man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook. You love the Philadelphia Eagles! Let me get a hell yeah!
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Party on Broad. Welcome to our big board show. Welcome, everyone. Happy NFL Draft Week. The NFL Draft is just a few days away, and what better not to start it off with a big board show. Joining me today is my man, Mark Henry. Follow him on Twitter at MarkHenryJr_. He is the host of the Tough Cover podcast and Marking Out with Mark. What's going on, Mark?
I'm just getting ready. It's getting so close now. I'm getting so nervous. It's all Thursday night. The draft is going to be here, and what is Howie Roseman going to do in that first round? And we don't know. We don't know. So I'm nervous. It's getting closer, but I'm excited too.
As always, guys, if you're watching us here during the show, react and grade to Mark's big board. We're going 1 through 50 with some honorable mentions and extras, and a little bit more and a little bit of extra stuff. But anyway, guys, let us know your thoughts. We want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. As always, please be sure to like, comment, and please be sure to turn on that subscribe button. Mark, what do you say you start us off here with your first tier of best prospects in the NFL draft?
Yeah, so I am going to break this down. It's my top 50. I do this every year. I usually just tweet it out, but this is awesome. This is a better way to do it. I like talking through it. And I break it down into tiers. So really, the number 2 through 9 players in this draft for me are pretty much in the same tier. I wouldn't be upset if anyone got taken over anyone in that 2 through 9 draft, depending on need. But there's one tier, and it's one player in this draft. It's tier 1, and it's quarterback Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. I've said this before, and I tweeted it out today to re-emphasize it, but I think Trevor Lawrence is not only the best quarterback prospect of my lifetime, but he's the best draft prospect of my lifetime, and especially going back to 2006 when I really started paying attention to the draft. I think the chatter about Zach Wilson being better by some analysts out there is flat out some of the worst draft coverage I've ever seen in my life. I think it's an absolute joke. I'm looking at you, Chris Sims. Trevor Lawrence has every single thing you would want in a quarterback. The arm strength, the accuracy, the mobility, the leadership, the deep ball, the poise in the pocket, the moxie, the intangibles, the statistics, the success, the height, everything you would want. If our only criticism is from some article that he gave a quote that makes it sound like he's not obsessed with football, then I'd say that's a pretty clean prospect. So the reason I'm saying he's the best quarterback prospect is because you look at the other number 1 quarterback prospects that have went recently. Guys like Joe Burrow, who only had 1 year of elite production. Kyler Murray, who was supposed to be a baseball player until the draft came around. Baker Mayfield, who was a shocker of a number 1 pick at the time. Jared Goff, who had he was not mobile. He had plenty of concerns. It was not an elite draft that year. Jameis Winston obviously had plenty of concerns off the field as well as throwing to the other team. Cam Newton was supposed to be a second rounder until the draft came around. He ended up going in the first. Sam Bradford can't throw the ball 25 yards. So all of those guys certainly were not as clean as Trevor Lawrence is. The only close one, the only comparable guy is Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck did not go 34-2, win a title, and never lose a regular season game. He also had much worse stats. Trevor did go 3-2 in the college football playoff, which might not sound incredible, but that means he went 31-0 in the regular season. But winning a title, losing in the title game, and then losing in the college football playoff in his 3 years is otherworldly levels of success in college football for a quarterback. He is the clear number 1, and he's the clear number 1 draft prospect I've ever seen. So, is there a comment? Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's me.
Everyone leave some comments.
Do you like Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah. The emphasis is on yes. Someone told me today, one of my buddies told me today that he doesn't think that there's that big of a difference between Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, and I like Justin Fields a lot, as we'll get to. But I think there's a difference between Trevor Lawrence and everybody. I think he's unbelievable. So let's get to tier 2. I call this my no doubt studs. And it starts off with a guy that I've been talking about since September. He started out as my guy back in September. You can search my name on Twitter and Pitts. There's plenty of tweets throughout the college football season telling everyone how good this guy from Philly at Florida is. He's the best tight end prospect I've ever seen. I know it sounds like I'm saying all this hyperbole. I think this draft has the best quarterback and tight end prospect I've ever seen. I think he's an absolute unicorn. That's not saying he's going to be – when I say that, by the way, I want to put emphasis on that. That's saying as a prospect coming into the draft. I'm not saying that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the best quarterback of all time or that Kyle Pitts is going to be the best tight end of all time. I'm saying if you evaluate them as draft prospects comparatively to the other draft prospects that have went high at their positions. And that's what I did with Lawrence, and it's easier to do with Pitts because the top prospects of tight end that have went in the first round have flamed out a lot of the time. And if you look at the best tight ends in the game, Gronkowski, Kelsey, Kittle, those guys have went in day 2 and day 3. But the thing about that is I think tight end has become a more important position in the NFL, and I think people understand what Travis Kelsey and George Kittle and Rob Gronkowski can do for your offense. And I think Kyle Pitts is the same mold, besides the blocking, of Kittle and Gronk. I really think he's going to step in and be a Darren Waller type player as a floor. I really think he can be Travis Kelsey, and I think he's a lock to be a top 5 to 7 tight end in football within the next 5 years. He's a matchup nightmare. I don't even know what my plan of action would be if I was a defense going against Kyle Pitts. Do you throw a corner? Do you put a safety? Do you use a linebacker? I really don't know. All offseason, I've been saying Atlanta should take a quarterback at 4 because I think Matt Ryan is on his way out, and I thought they should have got value for it. But now that we're here, now that the draft's close, I don't think they can pass up on Kyle Pitts at number 4 overall. I think it's the pick that they have to make. So I have Kyle Pitts number 2 overall.
His athleticism and just overall just elite level status is ridiculous. I'm going to react to this as an Eagles fan. Could you imagine Kyle Pitts against Nate Gary in a slot situation?
Oh, man.
I want to throw that out there. Oh, my God. This is a mismatched league. I just did a mock draft with the Eagles trading up for Kyle Pitts. He is the playmaker the Eagles 100% need. That's what it is. So who's number 3? Yeah,
and I have another pass catcher coming up here at number 3, but this one is not as consensus as everyone else. Everyone else seems to have fallen for Kyle Pitts throughout the draft process. It has not been as kind to Devonta Smith, and I'll say it just right at the top, I don't care about the frame. I don't care about the weight. If they would have drafted a week after the college football championship, Smith would have went top 6, in my opinion, no doubt. I think the draft process has been really unfair to a ton of players this season, and I'll be kind of notating that as we go along. And I pride myself on mostly sticking with the takes I had about the draft when I was actually watching the players week in and week out during the college football season. Devonta Smith, to finish the year the way he did against Florida, Notre Dame, Ohio State, against 3 really good defenses, literally made him look like the boogeyman. Like, I don't know what those defenses were supposed to do to stop him. They were throwing doubles at him. Everyone knew where the ball was going. Jaylen Waddle was out until the championship, and even when he was playing, he was hobbling around. I know Michi's fantastic, but he wasn't quite as ready as Smith. Everyone knew the ball was going to Smith, and they still couldn't do anything about it. His weight certainly wasn't stopping him against first-round prospects like J.C. Horn and successful first-round prospects from LSU last season. He's also been going up against the cream of the crop in terms of Alabama corners in practice and competing with the best receiver corps in the history of college football over the last few years in Alabama and standing out even more than those guys did. He's literally, obviously everyone knows this, but he's the first Heisman receiver in over 2 decades. He's the same height as Jamar Chase, and he's taller than Jaylen Waddle. I've heard many people call Devonta Smith an anomaly if he succeeds due to his frame. It will be even more of an anomaly if he fails, given the accolades he's achieved and the success he's had in the best conference in college football, which over the last 2 years with receivers especially has been a huge indicator of success. You look at the guys we passed up on, like Jefferson and Metcalf as the Eagles. By the way, this is an overall big board, but obviously I am an Eagles fan like Dives, and he's going to be looking at it from more of an Eagles perspective, but I obviously do have some Eagles notes in here. And you look at Smith, the dude had 117 catches and 20-plus yard catches with 1,900 yards. Receivers don't post these numbers ever pretty much, and then especially the ones that get close to that don't bust. Devonta Smith may not be as sure of a thing as Jamar Chase, but if I'm drafting receiver in the top 10, I want him to be a guy I believe can be a top 5 receiver in the league. And Smith is elite in the traits that can make that happen and absolutely can be, in my opinion. And for another guy who can be, let's move on to our next guy because it's kind of a tandem here, 3, 4, 5. At number 4, I have wide receiver Jaylen Waddle. To me, there's no reason to be low on Smith and high on Waddle, really. They're very similar in terms of frame, and I'm not worried about either. I think Jaylen Waddle is the closest thing I've ever seen to Tyreek Hill. And that's not just speed. His tape legitimately looks like Tyreek Hill. The way he attacks the ball at the catch point to go up and get it as a small guy is exactly like Tyreek. It literally looks like picture in picture. I saw someone put like a bottom top thing where it was both of them playing. It really does look picture in picture. And he's a big play creator who averaged 19.1 yards per catch over his career at Bama and 22.3 last season. When you watch him run on a screen or play in space, he legit looks like a running back. I love Smith and Waddle so damn much. People may think it's crazy to have 3 and 4 be wide receivers and then coming up in number 5, another wide receiver. But I think this is a special wide receiver class. And this leads me to our third wide receiver in the top 5 overall, wide receiver Jamar Chase out of LSU, who is most people's consensus number 1 overall. And I'm sure Dives will come in with his – I think he has a number 1 as well. So he'll come in with that after I kind of recap this. But there will be people who say I'm underrating Jamar Chase. And it's hilarious because I was the guy reminding people in October while he was opting out that Chase was the number 1 receiver in the board. And by the way, I still have Jamar Chase as a top 5 prospect on the board at 5 overall. So I still love the guy. I think the way Smith closed the season nudged him above for me. And I think Jaylen Waddle's elite speed nudged him above for me. I think Jamar Chase is a sure thing top 25 receiver in the league pretty much right when he steps in. But I don't see what he's absolutely elite at that will make him a top 5 to 7 receiver in the world down the line. But I think he will most likely be a Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, Allen Robinson type receiver where he's really solid. And obviously that's a fantastic pick, and it's well worth a top 10 pick. I think the perfect landing spot for him would be Cincinnati, who I think should take an O-lineman, but Jamar Chase has got to hope he's going to team up with Joe Burrow. But I think he more than likely ends up in Miami or Detroit. So do you have some takes for me about my opinions on those receivers?
Yeah, for me personally, it would be Chase, Waddle, Smith. This is win-win-win. Like if the Eagles were to come out with any of these 3, we said this during our mock drafts. I don't even know which one anymore, to be honest. But if the Eagles end up with Devonta Smith, it's a home run. Some stats for you. Here are the stats for the 4 games that Jaylen Waddle and Smith played together pre-injury. Waddle had 25 catches, nearly 557 yards, 4 touchdowns. Devonta had 38 receptions, 483 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So a lot of people want to talk about how kind of Devonta Smith's just kind of boosted following that Jaylen Waddle injury. That's not necessarily true. So, Devonta Smith is absolutely a top-tier quarterback just to kind of support your ranking there.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming up next at number 6, this really – so – as we've gotten closer, usually I'm the guy, especially when the Eagles draft in the early 20s or the late 20s or 32 a couple of years ago, I'm the guy who has like 10 guys that I want. So I'm never like, oh, I need this guy or this guy. But this year, I've gotten to the point where, especially after trading down and being a little disappointed in that, I really do want the Eagles to land Devonta Smith, Jaylen Waddle, or the next guy on my list at number 6, cornerback Patrick Surtain, who I actually think out of the 3 is the most unlikely to be there. I think he's a future Dallas Cowboy, in my opinion, and I think he's by far the best defensive player in this draft. He's actually on BetRivers. He's minus 255 to be the first defensive player drafted. In my opinion, that will be at 10 overall to Dallas after 9 offensive players come off the board in a row to open the draft. I think that's my opinion on what's going to happen in that top 10. But I really think Carolina and Denver should take a hard look at Patrick Surtain because he's an absolute sure thing. And I honestly hope they take him so Dallas can't get him. He's 6'2", 200 pounds, great length, and he uses it well. He can play press, he can play zone, great hands, great tackler. There are some doubts in his speed relative to the other top corners in the draft, but he still ran a 4.46. And when you watch him on tape, I didn't see one single play where I noticed a lack of speed negatively affecting him, to be honest. He's just so smart and knows how to play the position. It runs in his blood. His dad was a Pro Bowl corner, and his son looks he could be even better. I hope I'm wrong again, either that he goes to Dallas or that he's a shutdown corner. I hope one of those predictions are wrong, but I think he's going to be a shutdown corner who goes to Dallas, 10 that the Eagles have to deal with for the next 10 years.
He's my guy. If I had to rank my top 3 needs for the Eagles or top 3 guys, it's Patrick Surtain. Everything about the Eagles trading back to 12, the first name that screamed to me was not J.C. Horn. It was Patrick Surtain. And when you hear all these rumors about the Eagles possibly trading up, that's still the guy. That is still the guy that I think is Howie-proof and a guy that I think the Eagles would love.
Yeah, I do think that you could be right on that. I think that they could be moving up and looking at Patrick Surtain. So moving on to numbers 7 and 8, I'm not going to go too long on these guys because there's not too much Eagles relative. Again, this is my overall big board. I will, I'm sure, put out another Eagles big board. Maybe we'll do something specific or a top 12 to 15 that we can use during the live draft show. But at number 7, I have quarterback Justin Fields out of Ohio State. And then at number 8, I have quarterback Trey Lance out of North Dakota State. I think it's razor thin between the two of them. I like both guys a lot. I'm not going to say too much about them because I don't have too much conviction on who I like more of the two, but I feel very good about both in the top 3 or top 5, wherever they go. Justin Fields is more ready to play right away for sure and is more of a sure thing, but Trey Lance has special upside that I think some people are proclaiming is Zach Wilson's. I think Lance has a lot of Mahomes and Josh Allen in him, and I understand the skepticism due to the missed year and due to D2, but it seems like we're only punishing some people when it comes to that. I don't think Lance forgot how to play football. And then on the other end, Justin Fields has played so much on national scales and in big games over the last 2 years that I think he's been picked apart far too much. To me, it seems like a little bit of a Justin Herbert situation where if Herbert would have came out his junior year, there would have been a lot less questions. And then when Justin Fields came out if he would have came out after his junior year, there would have been a ton less questions. To me, it seems like if I had to guess, Trey Lance ends up in Carolina or most likely Denver, and Justin Fields and Mac Jones will end up flip-flopped in San Francisco and New England. I'm not sure which. If you're Fields, I have a question for you, Dobbs. Would you rather be drafted by San Fran at 3, or would you rather New England come up and move up to get you? Where would you rather land if you're Justin Fields?
No question, New England. Come on, man. like Fields' athleticism, Fields' dual threat, ability to move the ball downfield, his speed alone next to Bill Belichick is hands down the reason why. And I think Justin Fields is a very intelligent quarterback as well. So him next to Bill Belichick, using that brain, using that speed, using that downfield arm. You know what the difference is between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence? Justin Fields has played 10 games against teams with 10 wins. There it is. So I know his performance against good competition isn't that great, but Justin Fields has the pedigree. He has the experience. He has that experience. So Justin Fields is my number 2, and I fully agree with your rankings so far.
Yeah, I like Fields a lot. I will say that I think Trey Lance has a little bit higher upside, like I said, but I think Justin Fields right away will be able to be a starter in the NFL and be a high-impact starter. I think he ran like a 4.45 or a 4.46 somewhere in there, which I didn't think he was that fast, to be honest. I thought he was more of a 4.6 guy or a 4.5 guy. I know he has a mobility, and I always knew that, but 4.44 or 4.45, wherever that was shocking to me, and that definitely makes me raise my eyebrows a little bit at Justin Fields maybe having a little bit higher upside than I thought. And I really think, I didn't say this really, but I think that what has happened to Justin Fields in this draft process has been absolutely unfair and absolutely insane. I think it's unbelievable.
It's embarrassing that Mac Jones is even considered in the same tier. It's not like, what are we doing, guys? What are we doing?
We'll get there. I am not a Mac Jones guy. I'm not even a Zach Wilson guy either. But Trey Lance. Oh, yeah, Justin, yeah.
Justin says, I think you two should be in the Eagles draft room. And plus, Shane, guys, if you're watching here today, we'll be breaking down the draft all week long. We've got the draft party coming up on Thursday. I'm sure Friday and Saturday as well. I've already locked in Mark Schofield for a Friday show on a recap of the Eagles and a look ahead to day 2. More of that to come. Expect more of that to come. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I expect to. I definitely think I'll be taking a little bit of a step back from gambling this week, focusing more on the draft. So there may not be as many tough cover pods this week, but I think there might be a lot of mock drafts and a lot of things that pop up this week. So I'm definitely full draft mode, especially with that. I'm full draft mode with how the Phillies and Sixers are looking as of late. So moving on, just real quick too, I will just say for number 3 to San Francisco, if Fields or Mac Jones or Trey Lance end up there, that's still a really positive outcome with Kyle Shanahan. So it's different than most years. These quarterback draft landing spots are really, really solid. I still think we'll get to that with Zach Wilson. We'll get to the Jets. But at number 9, I have offensive tackle Pineda Sewell out of Oregon. He seems like a sure thing to me. He seems like he's fallen a little bit, and it might seem like I'm reflecting that, putting him at 9 overall, but I had him at number 6 overall. I just bumped the quarterbacks a little bit above him, and I bumped Surtain above him because Surtain, I kind of had been marking as not a high upside guy, but when I realized how high his floor was, I had to bump Surtain up, and it's similar to Sewell. They're very comparable players at different positions in terms of just really high floor, sure thing guys. Like I said, I have Pineda Sewell at 9, but I think Cincinnati should take him at 5 to protect Joe Burrow, even if there's better players available. I think he'll be a plug-and-play starter for the next 10 years or more, no problem. Looks like he'll end up in Cincinnati, Carolina, or Denver. Wherever he ends up, should be very happy to have him. I have him 9 overall, but I actually had him 6, like I said. So I just think this 2 to 9 tier is so tightly clumped, and the next tier I think there's a clear drop-off. But yeah, Justin's joining the draft party.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Hell yeah.
I love Penn. Like, if this guy was available at 12 for the Eagles, no hesitation. I run to the podium, take this guy. You never pass on a pure left tackle prospect. He's kind of like that Patrick Surtain type of vibe, like low floor, but a sure thing. He is an absolutely sure thing, according to Pro Football Focus. Number 4 pass blocking grade in the class, and the number 1 run blocking grade in the class. So in terms of like total package, he's almost it.
Absolutely. No, he's absolutely a sure thing, in my opinion, and should go in the top 10, no doubt about it. So then we move on to a 2-player tier here called My Guys. And if you've listened to Party on Broad in any episodes that I've been on, you've heard about these 2 guys. And we'll start with number 10, defensive end Gregory Rousseau out of Miami. He's my number 1 edge rusher in the class. He's a physical freak. All we have to look on at tape is 1 year of elite production. He's a Jason Pierre-Paul clone, as you've heard me say a million times, Dives. He's a South Florida kid, 6'7" guy, elite production in 1 year of college football after starting football late in high school. Literally just the same exact story as Jason Pierre-Paul, who's the guy that I wanted years and years and years ago for the Eagles to draft. They got Brandon Graham. It didn't end up being a disaster. Shout out to that forced fumble. But it ended up working out for the Eagles. But Jason Pierre-Paul has obviously been an absolute elite defensive end for a long time due to his physical traits. And not only can Gregory Rousseau rush the passer at an elite level, but he was solid against the run, and he's a terror for quarterbacks, not just because of pressure, but because of being a 6'7" guy at the line of scrimmage that can bat passes down, which can be a drive killer. He had a ton of passes defended. And if you've heard me on Party on Broad, you've heard that I think that that's a really important trait in DNs, and it's why I always gravitate towards the taller guys. And you've heard me rave about Rousseau for that very reason. And you've probably heard me rave about the next guy, linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, linebacker out of Notre Dame, my number 1 linebacker in the draft. Rufus Rogers, what's good, guys? Glad I didn't miss it. This guy's awesome. This guy's the man. He's always hyping up the same players that I like. So,
Amen.
If you've got any takes for me, Rufus, lay them on in the comments section. So Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah out of Notre Dame. As you can see on my shirt, I got Notre Dame on, on my shirt and my hat. So I am definitely in full homer mode here. I didn't even plan that at all. But he's just an absolute leader, a versatile player, and hybrid linebacker safety type, freak athlete. I think it's perfect for the modern NFL. Can do it all and has done it all at Notre Dame. Tackles for loss in the run game, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, passes defended. He's been excellent in every aspect of being a hybrid college football linebacker, and he's done everything that's been asked of him. Great ball instincts, and he made the play of the game against Travis Etienne, against Clemson in a win for the Irish. Very Jamal Adams type player, in my opinion. He's a hybrid. Isaiah Simmons went top 10 as the same type of player last year. I think JOK is a better prospect than he was. I wasn't a huge Isaiah Simmons guy last year, and he did disappoint, which could actually have a negative impact on guys like Owusu-Koramoah. But JOK may be undersized, but he makes up for it by being an absolutely genius football player, a leader, and an absolute dog. He had a fantastic answer in regards to the Eagles, and he made it clear that that's where he wants to play, which may piss off some Eagles fans if they were to take him. But I'd be very happy if they moved back and ended up with JOK. I'd be very happy and not that surprised either. Because JOK is not just some stiff linebacker. I know we don't take linebackers. That's the Eagles' mantra. But Howie may view him as a 3-down type of player that he was talking about in his press conference. So I would be very happy with moving back and taking Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. If you haven't seen him talking about the Eagles and giving the answer that he gave at his pro day, just go on Twitter and type in Owusu-Koramoah Eagles. He says that not everyone can succeed in Philadelphia. Not everyone has that mentality. When they win, they love you, and when they lose, they hate you. And it seemed like he just had a really good grasp on Philadelphia mentality, and he's like, that's where I want to be. I think Notre Dame is kind of similar. It's very intense, and he just wants to be the leader of wherever he goes, and he thinks Philly would be the perfect place for him. He really, like, he's even talked about Brian Dawkins. Like, he really seems like he wants to go to Philly, and it's always cool when you hear that kind of stuff. It seems like we also never draft those type of players that come out and say that kind of stuff. There's been plenty of players in the draft that have said that in the past and then not ended up here. Just something cool from the Eagles' perspective. So then we move on to my next tier. It's pretty boring. I actually think Dives might have a bit more to say than I do here because I know he loves one of these guys. Number 12, I have offensive tackle Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. At number 13, I have offensive tackle Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. And at number 14, I have offensive lineman Elijah Vera-Tucker out of USC. I think these guys, I could be convinced how to rank them anyway. Rashawn Slater seems to be the most sure thing. Darrisaw seems to be the most physical freak, kind of. And Vera-Tucker seems to be the guy that can play either tackle or inside. So it's just whatever you're looking for in terms of your scheme. What do you think, Dives?
Going back to Gregory Rousseau, I would
not. Oh, my bad.
No, you're good. I would not draft him in the first round, and I love Rousseau. I would not take a guy that needs to develop technique and is a raw prospect like that in the first round. We all know about Howie Roseman. In the second round, in the third round, all 100%. Hell yeah. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, amazing player. He had the second highest slot coverage grade in football last year, and he's a linebacker. Dude is a line. How many times, like, Eagles fans should be all over this guy, and he's definitely kind of flown a little bit under the radar. I would flip Darrisaw with Vera-Tucker because I know the Eagles love versatility on their defensive line. I think Slater and Vera-Tucker, and I think Vera-Tucker would make them think, pause or hesitate a little bit at number 12 if he's there. I think he's that talented.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't take Gregory Rousseau at 12 for the Eagles. I do think that there's a lot of teams where edge is a more prominent need. Like, I think Gregory Rousseau would be a great pick personally for Dallas at 10 or for New York at 11 or for New England at 15 if they want to go edge instead of quarterback. But for the Eagles, maybe not necessarily.
And I just want to comment that that is a great example of how bad this edge class is in this draft. It is all over the place. And that is my nightmare situation, that the Eagles end up with an edge guy like Jalen Phillips or Gregory Rousseau or Kwity Paye in the first round. That can't happen because the scouting grades on those guys are all over the place. And there's a lot of kind of like theories and conspiracy bullshit out there that the Eagles trade back to get an edge guy. They should get an edge guy, not there. That's what I'm worried about. And I will be like sweating bullets on draft day.
Yeah, I definitely. I'm a little less needing to get a corner in the first round as you and Shane are. I'm sure we'll talk about that more at length when we get to certain guys. But in terms of an edge, I have made it very clear I prioritize receiver and O-line over edge for sure. Right. And I prioritize corner over edge. I do think we are at the start of a rebuild. So if they think Gregory Rousseau is a Myles Garrett level prospect, I know that a lot of guys don't see that in him. I personally love him. I don't think he's a Myles Garrett level prospect. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but if they think he is just an absolute stud that has gotten unlucky a little bit and only played 1 year, and if he would have played 2020, he would have been a top 10 pick, I can understand. But the fact that it's Howie Roseman making the pick, I completely understand what everyone's skepticism would be for that pick. But as I've done in many, many mock drafts, I would love him at 37. But with him going to the draft, his agent has been going everywhere. I think he's got a famous agent. I don't know if it's Rosenhaus. I forget who it is. But he is saying that Gregory Rousseau has multiple people in the top 20 that want Gregory Rousseau, and that's why Gregory Rousseau accepted.
Dude,
it's crazy. I mean, it's not crazy to me. Obviously, I haven't 10, but it's crazy because the range on him has been so high.
But that's it, though. Like we're as Eagles fans, we're wanting one of these edge guys to go in the top 10 or top 11 so that they push one of these guys down to the Eagles. So maybe this is the guy. Who knows?
Who knows? I think it could be another guy that I'm not quite as high on that we'll get to later. So let's get to number 15. And I have a little tier here of 3 guys. and I call this my tier, and people will take issue with this tier, but tier 5, sure things with limited upside, in my opinion. At number 15, I have linebacker Mika Parsons out of Penn State. He's my number 2 linebacker. He's an absolute stud who would have helped his stock, in my opinion, to play last season. I think he and JOK are about equal on the field, and Parsons' tape may even stand out a little bit more athletically. But Parsons has a lot more, not more. He has a lot of off-the-field concerns, and JOK has the exact opposite, where his off-the-field situation is like exactly what you want. And he's a leader and a dog who didn't take a year off. Not that I care about that too often, but he did set out last year as opposed to a guy like JOK who wasn't as high of a recruit, who made himself a first-rounder with play last year. And I don't care about sitting out much for a receiver or quarterback or a skill position guy, but for these linebackers who have to have a nasty edge to them, I am not sure that Parsons really has that on the football field personally. He hasn't played in a ton of coverage also, which is my biggest concern about him. There's not a ton of tape on it, only 64 snaps for PFF in 2019. If he's going to be an elite linebacker at the next level, he's got to cover way more than that. In the end, I think Parsons is a pretty sure thing on the field with just limited upside because of his coverage ability or lack of coverage tape, really. And when you add in the off-the-field concerns, I have to take a bit of a step back and downgrade him just a little bit.
Love it. Yep. Quick take on Mika Parsons. He had a 97 production score according to Pro Football Focus. 4.36 40-yard dash.
I didn't know that.
Which would be the fastest of any linebacker at the combine since 2003.
Whew. Yeah, he's a hell of an athlete, and he gets after the quarterback from the linebacker position, which does make him. I feel like some of these guys, it might sound like I'm being negative on just because I'm kind of trying to point out some things that other people aren't pointing out maybe as often, but I have him 15 overall. I have him as a top 15 guy, and there's rumors that he could fall. If he falls past 15 or if he falls past 20, I think that's a point where maybe the Eagles start looking into making some phone calls into moving up.
Exactly.
So, and then here's another guy that I would also I know that Dodge also would like to make some phone calls to move up for safety Travon Warwick. Also, I didn't know this. He has a second last name, Travon Warwick Woodard. I didn't know about that. One of the websites I saw he had a second last name, a hyphenated last name. That's always a crowd pleaser. Safety 1 out of TCU. He's a Dodge favorite. He's someone that I've fallen in love with throughout the process, and it seems like he has risen from potential 37th pick for the Eagles and someone that we thought could definitely be there to a no-doubt first-rounder. I hope I'm wrong, but it seems like he has risen for sure. Jim Thorpe Award winner for the best defensive back in the country. 47 tackles, 2 picks, 9 passes broken up for Warwick in a great 2020 as pretty much the lone bright spot for TCU. His performance last season capped a career in which he racked up a total of 21 pass deflections, 7 picks, 2 forced fumbles, and 125 tackles as a 3-year starter in 3 seasons in a conference that has forced him to see a ton of different looks offensively, such as Mike Gundy's run-heavy offense or Lincoln Riley's chuck and duck offense. So it's just been very different offenses in the Big 12 because it may not be the SEC's level of talent that he's playing against, but he is looking at a bunch of different schemes that he will see in the pros. He's a great tackler who's extremely physical and tenacious and aggressive, which is exactly what you want out of a safety. I think he's a perfect modern NFL safety. He's another sure thing, in my opinion, that may have limited upside. But as the only top 50 overall safety in this draft, spoiler alert, there's no other safety as we go through this top 50. I think his value is boosted a bit here, even if that's a bit unfair. If you're a safety-needed team, this is your only chance at a sure thing starter, in my opinion. And you can't say that about these corners because I do think that there's a little bit more depth at that position in this draft. So Jevon Morgan is a guy I didn't expect to have this high, but I have him 16 overall. What do you think, Dives?
Dude, I don't even know what else is there left to say. I've been talking about this guy for months. On Party on Broad here. He's like, when you look at the Eagles, I'm talking about the Eagles' perspective, and they're in a transition mode. They lost Carson Wentz. They're looking for leaders on and off the field. This is what this guy is. He leads on the field. He leads off the field. And I think safety is a super underrated position for the Eagles to draft here. And it's a huge need as well. Kayvon Wallace, he hasn't shown you much. They haven't drafted a safety in a long time in the top rounds. But I think this is the year that if he's available, this is hands down. Trevor Meyer is hands down my favorite scenario of like trading up in that late first round range and getting this guy, because for a team that has a lot of young pieces and needs a leader on and off the field, it's a no-brainer, man. This is absolutely a no-brainer. And you look at Jonathan Gannon, ex-defensive backs head coach, or coach. This would be a perfect fit perfect guy for Jonathan Gannon to kind of just mold and into really the true leader of that Eagles defense. Yeah,
I'm trying to look up second-round picks here for the Eagles. I know that the first safety that comes to mind that they drafted in the first 2 rounds. Is it Nate Allen?
Oh, I was thinking Jaquan Jarrett.
Was that the first 2 rounds? Was that the first 2 rounds?
It might have been. I believe a second rounder. I could be wrong.
Wow, you might be right. I might have to do some research on that. Just doing a quick glance at my Football Reference here.
Well, I say that because
it was a year after 2011. You were right, Jaquan Jarrett, second rounder. 2010 was Nate Allen
from the Temple University. I'm a Temple guy, so that one hurt big time. Rufus says Parsons' rookie year at worst is a quarterback nightmare. Who isn't going to cover tight end or better tight ends, but everything you hear about him is about learning could grow into a faster trotter type. Interesting. I guess so. I mean, the talent is there. The red flags are there. It's just whether or not you're ready and willing to live with that. So Mika Parsons is a hell of a talent. I just would never take him in that 12 area.
Yeah, it's worrisome to me in terms of, I know you said you're not going to have to cover better tight ends, but in this modern NFL, every linebacker has to step out and cover a little bit. And if Mika Parsons is playing inside linebacker, I think he's absolutely going to have to. But I do understand that he will be a quarterback nightmare. He will rush the passer, and he will cause a lot of problems on defense wherever he goes. He could be a guy that's NFL ready kind of right away to step in due to his athleticism. But at number 17, I have cornerback J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. This is another dive spot favorite. After I'm going to give a couple notes on him and kind of let Dives take over. But it's my cornerback too. I have doubts on Horn due to the opposing team being able to take other aspects of that South Carolina defense and kind of not look J.C. Horn's way, kind of just push that to the side and attack that South Carolina defense different ways. So I think that there's a lot of limited tape on J.C. Horn in terms of what they would do if there was a full defense of guys that you're not going to just go away from one guy. I'm not sure he's going to be that shutdown level player at the next level. I think there's a chance Horn is just too grabby and handsy. So I'm a bit nervous about his ability to stick with guys going forward, the most athletic guys. But I think his confidence and his arrogance almost to a way is something that I like to see out of a corner. And it makes me confident that he'll will his way into being a solid starter in the NFL. I just have some worries, and I really honestly wouldn't want him at number 12. I will put out my Eagles big board, but it sounds crazy. I would be a little more upset with taking Horn than I would be with a Morig or a Parsons or an O lineman, just because I have some doubts about him at the next level.
I would love J.C. Horn, man. I'm just a huge fan of his ability to play fit. You're right. You're 100% right. He does get grabby, but I love his ability to play on the line. I love his ability to be physical, play aggressive. That's something the Eagles on defense and offense has lacked toughness. This defense has lacked toughness, and I think J.C. Horn would be a terrific pick. I agree. He's not if they get Jaylen Waddle, I'd be so happy. If they were to get Kyle Pitts, I would be so happy. J.C. Horn seems to be, we've talked about it ad nauseum here on Party on Broad. I'd be really happy to get him. According to Next Gen Stats, only 3 cornerbacks have entered the draft between 2016 and 2020 with a higher chance of making a Pro Bowl within the first 3 years. That is Horn, Marshawn Lattimore, and Denzel Ward. And all 3 of those, and those 2 guys made the All-Star game in year 1. How about that?
Wow, that's solid right there. I do like that. So, yeah, J.C. Horn is a guy I've said before that I was right in the middle on, kind of being like, if they drafted him, I'll kind of just shrug my shoulders. I'm at a little bit at the point now where I'll be just a little bit upset because I like a lot of the corners later on in the draft, and I think that there's value to be had waiting until day 2 on corner, and maybe taking a couple swings even on day 3. But, yeah, he's absolutely a guy. I still have him at 17 overall. And I'm sorry?
He's my number 2. He's right. I would go Surtain, Horn, Devonta Smith.
Wow. So that's taking out. Is Jaylen Waddle not in that?
Correct.
Waddle's above that. Okay.
Waddle be 1, then Surtain, then Horn, then Smith for me.
Would you be Chase, Pitts, Waddle, and
Yes.
then those guys? Okay, cool. So yeah, JC Horn, obviously. I also am going to do a mock draft at some point, like my legitimately what I think is going to happen mock draft, and this might not sell this very well. I care a lot less about that than I do about my actual big board. I care more about my evaluations of guys. It's more of what I focus on. But I am going to do a mock draft, and sometimes I fall in love with certain landing spots for guys. And JC Horn to Arizona to replace Patrick Peterson as the loudmouth corner on the Cardinals that steps in right away. He's already wearing red in college. He'll step right in the pros and wear red again. Stupid stuff like that my brain likes to do in mock drafts. I think JC Horn's already a Cardinal in my head, and Trey Lance is already a Bronco in my head. So I get married to certain landing spots for guys, and he's one of them. I think Mika Parsons. I didn't mention this when I went over this, but I think he is destined to. I almost feel like JOK and Mika Parsons are destined to go 17 and 19 to the Raiders and the Washington Football Team.
Yeah,
I'm not sure who will take either, but I think those guys will flip flop to 17 and 19. That's my opinion.
Love it.
And then let's move on to my next tier of 3 guys here, tier 6. I'm calling this my high risk, high reward tier. So we're getting to 3 guys who could really easily, in my opinion, go anywhere between 18 to 40. Like, I think that there is a wide range on where these players could go. A lot due to red flags on their own record or due to depth at their position. So at tier 6, starting it off at number 18 overall, I have wide receiver Terrace Marshall Jr. out of LSU. This has been the guy who, more so than anyone maybe, I've fallen in love with during this process. Terrace Marshall running a 4.38 is straight up scary at his length at 6'4". If that pro day time is absolutely legit, that is an insane number. In only 7 games in 2020, with 3 different quarterbacks, Terrace Marshall had 731 yards and 10 touchdowns as a top 3 red zone receiver percentage-wise in the country. In 2019, as the third option, Terrace Marshall caught 46 passes for 671 and 13 touchdowns in 12 games. All he catches is touchdowns, it seems like. I think there's a chance that if Jefferson or Chase weren't around last year, this would be a different conversation. He would have been a prominent part of that offense in a Joe Burrow-led offense. Terrace Marshall was a former 5-star recruit and the top receiver in his draft class coming out of high school, and got kind of unlucky by being the third guy at LSU and then finally getting to be the main guy on a team with no quarterback. His tape is absolutely eye-popping. Like I said, he's a 6'4" guy who allegedly ran a 4.38. That is just something that is going to – I'm not a workout warrior guy. I'll say that again with a guy later, but that's something that your eyes kind of pop out of your head like a cartoon there.
I mean, I love Terrace Marshall. I think he's the no-brainer. When I say Travon Warwick is like the guy that I want the Eagles to trade up and select in the late first round, Terrace Marshall is right among that top list. 6'3", 40-yard dash of 4.38. One of the highest ceilings in this draft by far. I love that kid.
Yeah, I absolutely fallen more and more for him throughout the process. At the beginning, I probably had him around wide receiver 6 or 7. And I still think that wide receiver 4 through 8 or 9 area or tier is kind of clumped, but I have found a little bit of separation with number 4 and number 5, who is number 19 wide receiver Kadarius Toney, my wide receiver 5 in 2021 out of Florida. He is a perfect modern NFL fast receiver who could transform an offense if he turns out the way certain people think he could. 10 touchdowns and 21 20-plus yard catches in 11 games as the clear second banana on the Florida offense behind Kyle Pitts. He breaks an insane amount of tackles for a receiver, and he has posted just 1 season of top-tier production, still raw as a route runner. But if you look at this guy, he's the type of guy that the other team has to game plan for. The other team has to be aware of going into the game, and I think that's huge in 2021 in the modern NFL. And I think Kadarius Toney has that speed that can really just kill teams, speed kills. And I think Kadarius Toney, with a lot of his flaws, like I mentioned, will still go in the first round just due to his speed.
Yep. Kadarius Toney, I mean, he's a versatile guy. I think the Eagles already kind of got that in Jalen Reagor a little bit, but you look at his yak, really, really good. 6.7 yards after the catch, 82% reception percentage. He has 18 avoided tackles. Dude's a playmaker. Dude gets yards after the catch. Of course, he would fit with the Eagles on an Eagles team that was 28th in explosive plays in passing last year. Clear fit.
Yeah, I'm obviously not quite as high on Rager as most. As I said before, I don't think he's a starting NFL receiver. So I'm not really ranking these receivers, even for the Eagles, based on what we have already, just because I think we're so barren at the position that I just want to take the best possible guy. But I understand Rager and Tony could be a bit of a redundancy. And if you had Tony and Marshall there on the board, you could go with Marshall because he might fit a little better.
My whole take on that is like if there's a playmaker on the board and you think he's going to translate, you take it. This is I'm talking about Howie Roseman here. Like as much as I want to like rank positions and all this kind of stuff, for me at the end of the day, it's all about best player available across the board. The Eagles have so many holes. If there's like CB4 versus tight end 1, get the tight end. Like that's how it's just simple it is for me come Thursday.
I agree with that to a certain extent for sure. Depending on the difference of where I have guys for sure.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And here's a guy who's really interesting. And there's a ton of guys like this in the 20s kind of that are high risk, high reward. So there's more guys who could belong in this. The next tier could really be a part of this tier, in my opinion, tier 7. But this is still tier 6, and this finishes out the high risk, high reward tier with cornerback Caleb Farley out of Virginia Tech as my cornerback number 3. He's everything you could want in a cornerback, 6'2", 210, 4 picks last year, or in 2019, because he opted out of 2020. 12 passes broken up. He was a dual threat dominant quarterback in high school, had 124 touchdowns in high school, something that I found out recently, which is interesting. It's always fun when you hear those guys that were just elite athletes their whole life. And he started out at receiver at Virginia Tech and ended up switching over to cornerback, which just shows how good of an athlete he was at multiple positions. He's good in press due to his elite speed. Doesn't that sound like a top 10 guy? Like everything I just said sounds like a top 10 guy, but there's his health, and he probably would be if it weren't for his health. He's had 2 knee injuries and is now dealing with a back surgery he had recently that kind of popped up out of nowhere, even though he's had back issues in the past with back spasms and such. It's hard for us to judge his health because we're not doctors, but it's just hard to be excited about drafting him in the top 15 or top 20 without being a bit nervous and hesitant as a fan, at least, without looking at the medicals. Some teams are in positions to take more chances than others, and a team taking him in the 20s could be a waste or an absolute steal. Like, I look at a team like the Tennessee Titans. Like, the Tennessee Titans just cut, like, their whole defensive backfield. Like, they need starters right away. Caleb Farley might not be the answer for them. Like, they might be a little bit nervous about his ability to step right in. He didn't play last year, and his ability to stay healthy. So, but then there's a team like, the Cleveland Browns, who are really set up well and don't really have one specific need that stands out above everything. Corner, something they could take. And if they wanted to beef up their corners and take Caleb Farley, and then maybe Caleb Farley turns into a shutdown guy across from Denzel Ward, and then that turns into the best pick of the first round somehow, or like, that could absolutely happen with Caleb Farley, someone who's got really high risk, really high reward, could make you look stupid, could make you look like a genius.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. 377 pass coverage snaps, 50 targets, 18 catches, 5.1 yards per reception, 1 touchdown, 12 forced incompletions, and he's given up a 26.8 passer rating allowed. Caleb Farley, man, one of my favorite guys in that day 2. If he falls to day 2, I would be doing, like we talk about doing backflips in round 1, I will be doing backflips in round 2 if he falls there for the Eagles.
Yeah, I absolutely would love to see him fall. And he's another guy I would be interested in trading up to the back of the first round. 100%. Rufus is exactly right. It could be Sidney Jones' situation, or it could be, I don't have a corner who's hurt in the top of my head that panned out, but it could be, someone dropping for reasons that aren't really, it could just be nonsense. In tier 7, I have pass rushers. This is just a pass rusher tier. I think it's the Sidney Jones comment you're saying?
No, I mean, like, I'm just not a fan of a good chunk of these guys coming up here.
Okay.
Other than there's one guy I truly like. Other than that, I'm just not in that interest of using a high asset this year, because that's what it would require mid to late first round pick to get a good chunk of these guys.
Yeah, I think for some teams it makes a lot more sense than others, but I'll kind of talk about a couple of those situations. Tier 7 pass rushers, my first guy in that tier. Let's move this down to show the whole. It's 5 edge guys, 21 through 25. At the end, I have Jalen Phillips out of Miami, my edge rusher number 2. Another guy with injury red flags here right after Caleb Farley, but just an absolute freak at the edge position. 6'5", 270-pound beast who filled in for Gregory Rousseau after Rousseau opted out and didn't miss a single beat. It's a shame they didn't get to play together. 15.5 tackles for loss in the run game, 8.5 sacks in 10 games. Another guy who's a terror at the line of scrimmage, had 3 pass deflections and a pick. He can line up inside or outside. He's great against the run. Again, doesn't that sound like a prototypical top 10 defensive end or a top 10 overall pick? He was former number 1 defensive high school prospect and went to UCLA before a long list of injuries. He actually briefly retired before last year and then came back and was fully healthy in Miami last year. So that is a positive. They had a clean bill of health, and he has checked out a lot of places. I've heard that there hasn't been as many questions on his medicals as they expected there to be. So that is a positive. Obviously, we're not doctors, like I said, with Caleb Farley, but it seems he would be a top 10 pick if we had more production to look at and less injuries to be worried about, kind of similar to Caleb Farley.
Yep.
And then at number 22, I have outside linebacker Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia as my edge rusher number 3. Ojulari brings a different look than these other top 5 pass rushers do in this tier. And I think that could ensure him a spot in the first round. He's the only guy who can definitely play outside linebacker in this tier and stand up as well as putting his hand in the ground and play DN just as well as these guys. If that's where the team that drafts him needs him, he's just a bit undersized at the end at 6'3". But he still, despite that, led the SEC with 8.5 sacks and 12.5 tackles for loss in 10 games at Georgia last year. 6'3", 240 pounds, Shaq Barrett type player. He's actually dropped back and played pass coverage a lot and looked great in those snaps. He has a knack for the ball with 4 forced fumbles and has a knack for making plays in big moments, such as a game-saving safety in their bowl game win over Cincinnati. Azeez Ojulari is a guy that I expect to go in the first round.
Awesome.
At number 23, I have D-end Jason Owa out of Penn State as my edge rusher number 4. He's a really weird evaluation because he had 0 sacks last year and only 5 sacks in a full season in 2019, but he's an absolute physical freak. 6'5", 255, ran a 4.36 40 at his pro day, and allegedly has been clocked at a 4.33, which is just unbelievable. Again, I've said it before, but I'm not someone who falls in love with workout warriors often, but holy hell is that impressive. He's elite against the rush, so that's also another positive. He has had a ton of pressure. It's just not a lot of sack production, which admittedly can be overrated. I know Chris Long says that quite often on his podcast. He's raw due to starting football late, just like a couple other guys that we've mentioned, but he doesn't have the elite production that some of those other guys that we've mentioned in the short amount of time that he's played have. Therefore, I can only have him 23rd overall, while he could be a top 10 player in the draft. Very boomer bust.
Yeah, I like Jason Owe is that guy that I think Howie would absolutely fall in love with. You look at I found this stat. Percent of career pressures charted as unblocked or cleanup pursuit pressures per Pro Football Focus. 28%. You look at top grade NFL edge defenders in 2020. TJ Watt had 39%, Khalil Mack 20%, Joey Bosa 30%, Myles Garrett 22%. Joseph Owa is right up there, man.
Yeah.
Howie seems like he sees that stat and be like, ooh, who's this guy?
No, he definitely is a really interesting prospect and a really hard evaluation, but just an absolute physical freak who gets a lot of pressure on the quarterback. At number 24, defensive end Carlos Boogie Basham Jr., my edge rusher number 5 out of Wake Forest, another guy that Dives and I are on the same wavelength with. Basham is a guy I've talked a ton about, another guy that I would love at 37. I think he's extremely underrated, and I think there's a really good chance he won't be there at 37. I think there's a good chance he sneaks in to the back end of this first round, and that could shock some if he's available at 37 for the Eagles. He's guaranteed to be a top 5 guy available on my board, I'd say. Carlos Boogie Basham Jr. also is just an elite name. Just an elite name. You can't forget about that. That's just absolutely elite. But then you also look at, I think he's just been absolutely underrated by many in this process. Some people have him as a day 2 guy, or in the 60s or the 70s. I think that's absolutely insane. But then you look at a lot of the big mock draft guys, still have him in the first round. I would love if the Ravens walked out of this draft with Terrace Marshall and Carlos Basham Jr. I like the Ravens. I pulled for the Ravens because of Lamar Jackson. I'm a big Lamar Jackson guy. And it's so clear when you watch them that they need a receiver and an edge rusher. And they just traded for the 31st pick. They walked away with 2 guys like that. The Ravens are a Super Bowl contender next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, Basham's one of my favorite guys in this draft. I've in several of my mock drafts, I've had him in day 2 to the Philadelphia Eagles. What the thing that, like, you watch Basham, like, you watch his tape, my God, like, he just, like, you see him everywhere. You see him everywhere, all over the place. It's so easy to see this guy on tape. And he's got tremendous power. He's got tremendous size. He had a tackle for loss in 23 straight games. But what you also love to see is that he's got great football IQ. A lot of these guys are measurement guys. I think Basham is up there with football IQ-wise. And that's something I think the Eagles fans would love to see on the defensive line, is someone that can be consistent and someone that can be a future starter there, rather than look good measurement-wise. Like a lot of these guys here, they look great measurement-wise, but I think Basham has that other level that we need because it's been inconsistent, to say the least.
And then the next guy at number 25, a guy that I'm not very high on, but I think will go much higher than where I have him ranked, is defensive end Kwity Paye out of Michigan. I have him as my number 6 edge rusher. His production is a little bit below many of the other top pass rushers, even with his inside-out versatility, being able to play inside or outside. I'm just not that huge on Kwity Paye, and I don't think he jumps off the screen. I think he will be reached on in the top 20, and I just don't see him being a huge difference maker or a high upside guy. He'll be ready right away, but he doesn't have the raw physical traits and ability some of these other guys have, in my opinion, and I just am not quite as high on him as most. I think he is going to be a Dave Gettleman favorite. I think he's going to be the number 11 pick to the New York Giants, who should trade down and pick him, but Dave Gettleman doesn't know trading down's allowed. So I think he's the exact type of guy that the Giants would love. He's got New York Giants written all over him as a reach, and I'm not a big Kwity Paye guy. So let's move down to my next tier here. Justin has a comment. The next, Alex Singleton. You see him everywhere.
Yeah, Kwity Paye is that guy that you hope that jumps into that top 10, because I'm not a fan of that guy, and I just have nightmares for the Eagles taking him. That would be just a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% do not want the Eagles even looking at him in the first round. So tier 8. This is my back end first round guys, and it's actually, I sometimes have had 25 first round picks graded. Sometimes there's 25 players that I have a first round grade for. Sometimes there's 40 first round players that I have a grade for. I think last year was one of those years where I really liked. I thought it was a deep draft last year. I don't feel that way this year. It actually worked out perfectly to the point where I think there's 32 first round players in this draft that I gave a first round grade to. And at number 26, I have quarterback Zach Wilson out of BYU, who I have as my number 4 quarterback. He's obviously going second overall to the New York Jets. I think this is a decision that will haunt Joe Douglas and the New York Jets for a long way to go. I'm not huge on him. I understand that people see the Mahomes in him. I see a little bit more Mayfield in him. I think he could be Baker Mayfield, but I see a lot of Johnny Manziel in him too. So I think I am not a huge Zach Wilson guy. If you look how he played against against better defenses, I don't think that he stepped up the way that I've seen the other prime quarterbacks step up. He doesn't pop off the screen to me in the way that those guys do. I don't think his upside is quite as high as a Trey Lance, and I don't think he's as a sure thing as a Justin Fields. So I am not high on Zach Wilson, and the reason I have him 26 is because I easily could see him flaming out. I think he has really, really hard Mitchell Trubisky vibes. Like, I think that there is really, really Mitchell Trubisky aspects to his game. I'm not a huge Zach Wilson guy, as obviously I have him 26 overall. But, yeah, I think the Jets are making a huge mistake. And I think he's also stepping into the worst situation. Like Fields or Mac Jones or Trey Lance are going to step into, probably San Francisco, Carolina, Denver, New England, Washington, which are just such better situations than the New York Jets are right now. So I do not think Zach Wilson is going to succeed in New York. And I think people will, similar to Sam Darnold, would be like, oh, it's the situation. They stink. How can you blame them? But I think a lot of it will have to do with Zach Wilson, just like a lot of it had to do with Sam Darnold.
Awesome.
At number 27, I have quarterback Mac Jones out of Alabama, my number 5 quarterback. Another guy I'm not that high on, and a big thing that has sneaked under the radar. This dude has 3 DUIs. We're talking about Justin Fields if he loves football and if he's competitive and all this nonsense about him off the field. Mac Jones has 3 DUIs. Like, we're not talking about his off the field concerns, which I think there's some nonsense at play there and some favoritism. I'll just leave it at that. But I'm not a huge fan of what this draft process has done in terms of positives for Zach Wilson and Mac Jones and negatives for Justin Fields and Trey Lance. I think Fields and Lance are in one tier, and Wilson and Jones are in a clear another tier way below that. And if Wilson and Jones go above those guys, or especially we know what Wilson is. So if San Francisco takes Mac Jones at 3, I believe that they deserve all the criticism that they will definitely receive.
Yep. I have nothing really positive to say about either of those guys.
I thought you were a little higher on Wilson than I am.
I am, but I mean, speaking as an Eagles guy, like, they're not even. I mean, the only thing that Mac Jones presents to the Philadelphia Eagles is potential trade bait and holding the New England Patriots, holding the Chicago Bears ransom for hopefully more day 2 picks, which would be great. But other than that, move on.
Yeah, moving on to my number 28 offensive tackle, another Notre Dame guy right here. I have offensive tackle Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame, my offensive lineman number 5. It seems that there's become a very clear top 4 O-lineman with Sewell, Slater, Dariso, AVT, in whatever order you want to put them in. It seems that those, in most mock drafts, those are the first 4 that come off the board. And it seems that number 5 has been different based on whatever source you're looking at. Sometimes it's Liam Eichenberg. A lot of the times it's Tevin Jenkins. There's some other guys that are up there as well. For me, I have Liam Eichenberg pretty convincingly as my number 5 offensive line prospect. He's a 6'6", 300-pound big boy. He's handled first-round prospects for years. As a 3-year starter at Notre Dame who started 38 games, he's not an athletic marvel and can get – sorry, Matt McGinty, if you're watching. I don't mean to bring up Marvel, but he's not an athletic marvel and can get beat around the outside by super athletic guys in his sophomore season especially. But that has not stopped him in the last 2 years. He has not allowed a sack. So that shows he's adjusted to elite speed in matchups against teams such as Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, USC, Miami, etc. But even with that number, he's even better in the run game as an absolute mauler. He's a plug-and-play guy right away wherever he goes, and that's why I feel pretty confident that he'll go in the first round.
Love it. Eichenberg is I think he's more of a right tackle at the next level. But like you said, plug and play. I don't know how much he fits the Eagles' projection moving forward, considering where they're at right now with the roster. It would make sense. I think they would probably look at this stage in that like top day 2 area at either a guard or a center with a little more versatility.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to a tier. We'll definitely get it. I think the first one I disagreed with. I think Eichenberg has the tools to be a long-time stud. His mechanics are perfect and his feet never stop. I think I have him higher than most, but I like him a lot. I could see myself being a little too low on him at 28 overall, to be honest. But maybe he was saying with Dodds that Dodds wanted an interior alignment. I'm not sure. But, Eichenberg's a guy that I like a lot. But the next guy's not really a guy that I love. Number 29, defensive tackle Christian Barmore. I don't have a lot to say. He's the clear number 1 defensive tackle. So in the logic that I said about Travon Warwick, where he will probably be overinflated where he gets drafted, or maybe, in my opinion, more correctly inflated. The same could happen with Christian Barmore. I know Shane was saying in our Discord that he can't remember the last time a defensive tackle hasn't went in the first round, and that was a really good point. So I do think Barmore will be a first-round pick, but he's just someone who doesn't have jump off the screen potential to me. Not someone that I'd be really interested in, even the Eagles taking in the second round. I'd rather all of those edge rusher guys that I mentioned before. I think you're a little higher on him than I am.
I am. I'm definitely higher on Barmore, and I think you absolutely nailed it. It's really because the depth here at this position is so bad. I could see Barmore easily being a top 15 pick because of that.
Yeah. I have him mocked kind of late in the first round just because I didn't see a clear position of need at interior D-line in the top 20. But you're absolutely right. If a team addresses that as a need, he will be the only guy that they can look to fill that need in the first probably 60 to 70 picks. So it makes total sense, unless you want to say Kwity Paye can play inside. But moving on to I have 3 receivers to close out the first round in my top 32, my first round draft pick graded guys here. Number 30, I have wide receiver Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, my number 6 wide receiver. At number 31, I have Rondale Moore out of Purdue, my number 7 wide receiver. And at number 32, I have Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, my number 8 wide receiver. Something that was interesting here, my top 6 wide receivers are all from the SEC. So I guess I have a severe SEC bias. But Rondale Moore and Rashad Bateman, 31 and 32, these are guys that most people wouldn't have Rondale Moore as high as I have him, and most people wouldn't have Rashad Bateman as low as I have him. I just don't see Rashad Bateman's elite traits that would put him above the speed and athleticism of Elijah Moore and Rondale Moore. I get that they're a little bit more gadget-type players, both being 5'9", but they were both super, super successful, especially Elijah Moore in the SEC. Elijah Moore is a guy that I would be really interested in for the Eagles or for any team drafting in the back end of the first round or the beginning of the second round. I just look at these guys like Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Rashad Bateman, like they got to be just praying that like the Green Bay Packers take them. They'll just become a superstar. If any of these guys go to the Green Bay Packers, they'll probably end up being better than some of the receivers I have ranked above them just due to fit.
Quick name on there is Rashad Bateman. There's a lot of talk with the Eagles and Rashad Bateman, especially in a trade back kind of scenario. We've seen it kind of across the board. Look at the stats. He's well built. His point of attack is really strong. He breaks tackles after the catch, 36 tackles and 147 career catches. Not great hands, 19 drops on 166 catchable targets, and reportedly ran under a 4.440 at his pro day, although that varies. So Bateman is definitely a sexy name there if the Eagles do trade back and collect assets.
Yeah, I guess my point on Bateman is I don't see the sex appeal. I guess on Bateman, like with Terrace Marshall, I would say the two guys, the two main guys at receiver who have those drops issues are Terrace Marshall and Rashad Bateman. But when I look at a guy like Terrace Marshall, he's got those physical traits and running such a fast 40 at his height and his frame that I find it hard to be like, oh, I like Bateman more. And then with more and more, I understand people liking Bateman more because he's more of a 3-down receiver, but I just think Elijah Moore and Rondale Moore have really, really high upside that I don't necessarily see with Bateman.
Yep.
So clearly this is Bateman at 32 is me saying it's a little bit of an indictment, me saying that I wouldn't love to see the Eagles trade back and take him. That's why I've been a little hesitant of Shane's mocks when he's done those. But moving to my second round guys, I'm going to kind of breeze through these a little bit more. At number 33 and number 34, running back Najee Harris out of Alabama, my running back 1, and number 34, running back Travis Etienne out of Clemson, my running back 2. I really want to rank Etienne over Najee Harris, but when you look at Najee Harris, they ran like the same 40 time, I think. And they also, I think he had like just as many catches last year, or maybe just slightly less, when that should be Travis's advantage. It's hard to really find a reason to rank Etienne any higher. I completely understand the people who think that I might be going a little bit too far, underrating running back. I just wouldn't want to take one in the first round. And I get that I'm kind of cheating the system, putting them at 33 and 34. But I think that they're pretty good running back prospects relative. I don't know if there was one as good as them last year in last year's class. But I still wouldn't love to see either of them go in the first round. I do think both of them go in the first round. But I usually have the amount of first-round draft prospects is usually the amount of people I rank over the first running back. in my rankings. That's usually a good delineation point for me. But yeah, I have Harris and Etienne at 33 and 34. It looks like they have definite potential landing spots in Miami, New York, Pittsburgh, and Jacksonville late in the first round. 35 and 36, I have Asante Samuel Jr. and Greg Newsome, cornerback out of Florida State, Asante, and a cornerback out of Northwestern for Greg Newsome. I didn't know that Greg Newsome had quite as many injury flags until very recently. I kind of just thought he was a clean, safe prospect, and that's why I had him mocked to Tennessee at 22. But it just escaped me. I wasn't quite sure that he had as many injury red flags as he does. So that is why I downgraded him. I did have him in the first round initially. And same with Asante. I also had him in the first round. But I am a little nervous about Asante's size and his ability to tackle. Get that, being Asante Samuel's son. But he is an absolute ball hawk and someone that I'd be interested in both of these guys for the Eagles at number 37.
Yeah, Newsome's definitely a name all Eagles fans should absolutely keep a look at on. NFL quarterback passer rating of 31.7 when targeted in 2020. So this guy is glue against college wide receivers. So I think Newsome is definitely a guy, especially if he falls there to day 2. Big name. And Asante Samuel Jr. also would be just terrific. Now we're getting into, I think, is the strength of this draft here in the day 2 area. Go ahead.
Absolutely. I do think that this draft class is very deep. But that concludes tier 9, potential first rounders, but not quite for me. Those were guys that just barely missed that first round grade by me. So then moving on to tier 10, I have potential day 2 steals. Number 37, I have linebacker Jabril Cox, who has become one of my guys. North Dakota State transfer to LSU, where he's just been elite everywhere he's been. I think he's just an elite athlete. I think he can do it all in terms of coverage, getting to the passer, stopping the run. Just a guy that I would love to see the Eagles take at 37, even though it seems like he could be a guy that could last all the way to the 3rd round. And if the Eagles could take a guy like Jabril Cox in the 3rd round, that would be like a steal of the draft, in my opinion.
I mean, this is like another one of those like Travon Meyer kind of guys. Like I love Jabril Cox. He's been a guy that's on my board. So many mocks. And like you said, like JOK, like one of the best in terms of coverage. And that has been a weakness. A guy that can cover slot, cover tight ends. The Eagles haven't had a guy like that in so freaking long. Jabril Cox, man, would just be an instant fan favorite in Philadelphia.
Agreed. I think he'd be fantastic. And then at number 38, the end, Joe Tryon from Washington. Edge rusher number 7 for me. Just another freak athletically. Not quite sure about his medicals or not quite sure about his production. It's not quite as high as some of these other guys, so I had to downgrade him a little bit. But he is an absolute freak athletically and a guy that I'd have to have interest in, even at 37 for the Eagles, even though I have him 38 overall. So moving on to this next tier of guys, this is just going to be mostly offensive linemen. At number 39, I have interior O-lineman Landon Dickerson. This guy seems to be like the leader of that whole Alabama team the last couple of years. It seems like he's been setting up I heard that he was like paying out of his own pocket to set up like Alabama practice sessions for their pro day for all the draft prospects to come to, which is pretty funny that there's so many first round prospects that they were able to do this. Seems like everyone, he tweeted something out about like thanking the Alabama guys, and every single Extertain, Mac Jones, Devonta Smith, Jaylen Waddle, like Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, like everyone was all up on it. It seems like he's an absolutely loved guy, and it seems like he's a leader. He's someone that's gotten hurt a few times, which is definitely why he's not a first round pick, or else he'd be a no-brainer in my opinion if he didn't have those injury red flags. But he's someone who has been just excellent every time he started at Alabama. And then moving on to number 40, I have offensive tackle Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State, my number 7 offensive line prospect. He's someone that most guys have been I think he's in most first round mocks. I think he's even in my first round mock. But to me, I didn't see what made him stand out above these guys in this tier kind of. This tier to me is just guys that are all they all have either solid upside or are plug and play guys right away, but none of them stand out from each other to me. Like 39 to 44, really, you could sell me on any rankings of these guys. At 41, I have Samuel Costner, offensive tackle out of Texas. At 42, I have Creed Humphrey, interior lineman out of Oklahoma. At 43, I have Quinn Liners, interior lineman out of University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And I have Dylan Radunes, offensive tackle at North Dakota State. I believe he's 6'8", Dylan Radunes. But you just look at these guys, it depends on what you need. If you need a guard, Creed Humphrey's probably the right guy. Or if you need a center, Dickerson or Miners are the right guy. Miners could be a guard as well. If you need a tackle, Radunes could be the right guy. It could be Cosme. It could be Jenkins. It just depends on your scheme. It depends on what you're looking for, what side of the ball or what side, left tackle or right tackle you're looking for, or if you want outside or inside. I don't know if you have any take on my ranking of these guys.
Landon Dickerson's my guy. I just took him in one of my recent mock drafts. You look at the Eagles not looking at 2021, but 2022 and beyond. The future is kind of unclear what is kind of in the cards for Jason Kelce. Landon Dickerson, like you said, was the leader for Alabama. Dude is just leader top to bottom and just a mauler, a pass, run, blocking mauler. And I think Eagles fans would love him, even though he might not make that big of an impact in 2021. Tevin Jenkins, first-round pick. Samuel Cosme, probably first-round pick. So it's a really strong group.
Yeah, there's definite potential here for all these guys to go in the first round, or a lot of these guys to go in the first round. And so is there for the next two guys I have coming up. I think there's a wide range on where these guys could go. 45 and 46, Zaven Collins, linebacker out of Tulsa, and Jamar Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky. These guys have both been wide range type of guys. I think Zaven Collins is a guy that's fallen a little bit in the process. I feel like at the beginning he was a first-round pick, and it seems like a lot of mocks as of late haven't had him in the first round. Then Jamar Davis is a guy at the beginning of this process that was assumed to be a day 3 guy, maybe a day 2 guy. And it seems like the Mel Kipers and the Tommy Shays and the Dan Jeremiahs have all fallen in love with this guy and pumped him up to a first-round prospect, or maybe even like a top 50 prospect, whatever that may be. And I am not sold on either of these guys. I think they're both kind of tweeners. I know that a lot of guys project Zaven Collins to play on the edge. And we don't really know what Jamar Davis will be. He was super productive at Kentucky and is an absolute dog, and another leader, which is something you want at that linebacker position. But I'm not sure exactly what to think of either of these two guys. I don't have an ironed out take yet, really.
Zaven Collins, man, is my guy. I've been on the Zaven Collins train for a long time. 6'5". What you need to know about Zaven Collins is he can drop in coverage. He can blitz the quarterback. Measurement-wise, he is legit. Another guy that I think Howie Roseman will absolutely fall in love with and be that kind of weak side linebacker for the Eagles.
Yeah, he definitely could be. It probably goes back to me just not watching a ton of Tulsa and Kentucky last season, so I probably didn't get to see them as much. I've watched the tape, but not quite. I didn't get to kind of build on my opinion on them throughout the year. But Zaven Collins does seem like a guy that there's a wide range of opinions on. There's some people who don't think he should be considered in the first round, and there's some people who think he's a top 20 guy. And that's kind of consensus for guys like that coming out of Tulsa. So I think that it's very interesting to see where he'll go. I think it could be anywhere from like 20 to 60, kind of. Yeah. Same with Jamar Davis.
He played quarterback, so he's a little raw to the position. But it's not like a Davion Taylor. Like, this is a guy that has football IQ and instinct. So he would be a terrific pick, man. Just his lateral agility is outstanding. He definitely needs to be coached up a little bit, better technique, better tackling, all that kind of stuff. Needs to learn how to shed blockers a little bit better. But Zaven Collins, in terms of athleticism, in terms of everything you want the Eagles on that defensive side in terms of playmaking, I would be ecstatic in that day too.
Yeah, so for sure. So this is going to wrap up my top 50 here. I've got 4 O linemen, which wraps up really kind of a theme of my top 50. I have 15 offensive linemen ranked in my top 50. I think that's a strength of this draft. It may not seem like it at the top because there's only really one top guy in the top 8 or so in most people's big boards. But the strength is really that tier of O linemen that we talked about before. And then this tier as well. At 47, I have offensive tackle Jackson Carman out of Clemson. He's my 12th ranked offensive lineman, and he's protected Trevor Lawrence's blind side for the last couple of years. I could 100% see Jacksonville reaching on this guy. just out of like loyalty to Trevor Lawrence. And if they think he's a legitimate offensive tackle prospect, I think it makes a ton of sense. At number 48, you have offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood, who's just an absolute monster. Just a huge guy, typical Alabama mauler offensive tackle. There's been kind of hit or miss with that over the last couple of years, but as I always say, I don't like to evaluate guys based on their history, their school's history in terms of producing at that position. I try to evaluate them based on their own merits, and he's a hit or miss prospect for sure, Alex Leatherwood. Someone that I've seen a wide range on. He could be a first rounder, or he could be a day 2 guy. Same with Jalen Mayfield at offensive tackle, number 49, my 14th ranked offensive lineman out of Michigan. Another guy who has a wide range of outcomes. And then to close out my top 50 at interior O-line out of Ohio State, I have my 15th ranked offensive lineman, Wyatt Davis. Another interesting guy. It's just like I said before with that tier above, a lot of these teams may have Davis above all 3 of these guys if they prioritize interior O-line going into this draft. It's just going to depend on what teams need when these guys come up on the board. So that wraps up my top 50. What do you think of those guys?
I like Wyatt Davis. I think you're a little high on Wyatt Davis. I've seen him like mocked kind of in that 3rd, 4th round range a little bit. But Wyatt Davis is a guy that I've definitely like. If we're not targeting interior offensive line, which I don't think, like the Eagles are kind of set there. But you saw the last 2 years, man. This is a team that has been riddled with injury year after year, and like Wyatt Davis, I really like there in that like round 3 area if he's available.
Yeah, for sure. And after this, like this is my top 50. I really spent like a lot of time comparing these guys to each other. My 51 through 64 in terms of like for the second rounders is just like dudes I like. I didn't have like any ranking of them. I mean, we can just like scroll down if you want to point anyone out, we can.
Sure.
But next we got to go to the other page. So we go all the way up to 51. This is just dudes I like that I didn't quite make my top 50. Joseph Asai was a guy that was in my top 50 and got edged out. He's someone who's been productive at Texas over the last couple of years, a guy that I like a lot. Nick Bolton, linebacker, Missouri, guy that's been I think he's another guy that's kind of fallen throughout this process. I feel like at the beginning he was someone that I was seeing mocked in the 1st round. Lately, not so much. Chad Surratt, linebacker, a lot of people expect him to go much later. We obviously have talked about him ad nauseum. We like him a lot, and I think he should go in the 2nd round or early 3rd at the latest. So he's a guy I'd love the Eagles to take. Ronnie Perkins, edge out of Oklahoma. He's a guy that I don't know enough about, to be honest. I need to do some more digging into him, but he is someone that I saw enough production to rank at least in this next tier of guys. Then this next couple safeties, Javon Holland, Richie Grant, both super productive where they were in Oregon and UCF, but it's hard to compare them because of how weak the safety position is this year in the draft. Maybe they wouldn't be this high if there were more safeties, but the fact that there's so few makes them a little bit more desirable. And then we just get to receiver guys that I like mostly. Just Jalen Darden, who we've talked about so many times. But I absolutely love Jalen Darden. Tutu Atwell, a guy that I think he ran something crazy in the 40. I should have wrote it down. But Donnie Brown, another really fast deep threat from North Carolina. Same with Tylan Wallace out of Oklahoma State. These are pretty much just deep threat gadget type guys. And then Brevin Jordan, Tommy Tremble, both receiving type tight ends out of Miami and Notre Dame. Brevin Jordan is a guy that I could see. Like I said before, tight ends really pop in round 2, round 3. Brevin Jordan's a guy I could see looking back on and being like, why the hell didn't I see this with Brevin Jordan? He's a definite athlete. Tommy Tremble should be a solid player. And then to finish out, I have Javonte Williams at 63 and Trey Sermon at 64. I like Trey Sermon more than Javonte Williams. I did a little bit more deep diving before I ranked it today. Trey Sermon should be higher on this list. He even has an argument to be like in my top 50. I absolutely love the guy, even though he's probably going to go in like the 4th round. But did you have anyone that stuck out to you there?
Yeah, just like scroll up a little bit. Jevon Holland. Jevon Holland has terrific size, big time playmaker there for safety. Again, if you've been following us along, like I love the safety. Some of these safety guys here in that day 2 range. Richie Grant, super athlete, would be an interesting guy to pair next to Kayvon Wallace. I love Jalen Darden. I don't need to talk about that. We've been talking about him to death. Chaz Surratt, another ex-quarterback linebacker prospect that I think would be really fun here in midnight green. And like you said, like Howie said, you want to add as much speed as possible. Travis Rock can drop back in coverage, and he has a lot of athleticism. So I love a lot of these names. I really do. Like the Eagles need to add at least 3 starters here, and I'm hoping to get at least 2 or so in this day 2 area.
So I have a quick little game plan, Dives.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is you're the reaction person. It's called Am I Crazy? so you have to tell me. I'm going to list off the 10 guys I like more than consensus, and then the 10 guys I don't like more than consensus.
Okay.
And you have to tell me if I'm crazy either way.
Sure.
Number 2, tight end Kyle Pitts. Am I crazy to be as high on Kyle Pitts as I am?
No.
Okay, awesome. I agree. Number 3, wide receiver Devonta Smith. Maybe if you want to do 1 to 10, you can do a 1 to 10 scale if you want.
1 to 10, 10 being like super crazy.
Yeah. Like Mel Kiper having Trubisky over Watson and Mahomes crazy.
He's like in that 5, man. Like he's going to make a lot of people look stupid, or a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's the definition of the analytics versus eye test. So I'll say I like Devonta Smith. I always have.
Yeah.
That's a really hard one. I'll say 5.
Yeah. So then I think you're going to say 10 on this one. My number 10 overall player, defensive end Gregory Rousseau.
Yeah, that's way too high.
Number 11, linebacker Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Am I crazy?
For the Eagles or overall?
Overall or for the Eagles?
I'll say, look at the way the league is rolling. Everyone's looking for a 3-down linebacker now. 4.
Okay. Travon Warwick, number 16, safety.
0.
Number 18, wide receiver Terrace Marshall.
0.
Number 24, defensive end Carlos Boogie Basham Jr.
Dude. We're talking about a day 2 guy. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But he's one of my favorite guys in terms of length, in terms of he's got that wingspan. It's clear that I know why you like Gregory Rousseau. It just clicked. I'll say a 3.
Yeah, I love those type of guys. I have a type. And then these guys that I know you're not going to say crazy, so I'll just say them at the end. Linebacker Jabril Cox, wide receiver Jalen Darden, running back Trey Sermon. 3 guys I love. Yeah. So this will be more fun, guys that I don't like as much as consensus. Number 5, wide receiver Jamar Chase. Am I crazy to have him 3rd overall in receivers?
Yes. 9.
Number 17, cornerback J.C. Horn. I have him number 2 overall at cornerbacks, but am I crazy to be that low on him at 17?
No, you're not crazy at all. I'll say a 4.
Okay. Number 25, defensive end Kwity Paye.
Wait, what? So are you crazy to have him that high?
That low. Because I think he's okay. Yeah, I think we're in the same. Yeah.
I'm not high on the position at all.
Yeah. Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. You can put them together. Zach Wilson. You think Mac Jones is probably less crazy, so we'll keep it separate. 26 quarterback Zach Wilson.
I'm going to say NA. Even I'm going to say NA, even though I know the reports were like the Eagles were looking at Zach Wilson. I've never scouted the quarterbacks class. That Shane has done that, so that's a good Shane question. I'll say I'm not qualified to respond.
Number 29, defensive tackle Christian Barmore.
I'm really high on Christian Barmore. I think in terms of ceiling, in terms of lack of guys at that position, I think he's going to be drafted really high. So we're ranking guys that probably will bust, right?
Yeah, I'm saying, am I crazy to I am 29 overall? Is that way too low?
No, I think that's pretty fair. I think that's probably right around where he should go. But I think someone's going to jump the gun on him because of his measurements.
That could be true. Number 32, wide receiver Rashad Bateman. Am I crazy to be? I am wide receiver 8.
Yes, I'll say 8. I think I would be shocked if he's not in the top 25.
And then linebacker Zaven Collins. Is it crazy to have him 45? I know you're. Yeah. I know you're a big fan.
I'll say 9. I think a guy that's 6'5" with his lateral quickness, with his athleticism. Dude has Pro Bowl written all over him if he can get it together.
And then to finish it off, these are two guys you probably don't have an opinion on since you haven't scouted quarterback too much. But Kellen Mond and Kyle Trask are two guys that I think kind of have some day two buzz. Like a lot of people, and same with Davis Mills. You could throw him into this too. I don't think anyone outside of the top 5 quarterbacks is worth taking in the first 100 picks. I think that they're the same tier as Sam Ehlinger, Ian Book, Shane Buechele. I just wouldn't want to invest any capital in any of those guys. And you know that a team like the Chicago Bears, the Washington football team, will, I think, in the second round, take a Trask or a Mills or a Mond, and I think that's a mistake. I don't think any of those guys have starting quarterback upside, personally.
All right. Yeah.
So, yeah, that wraps it up. I thought that was awesome.
That was awesome, man. Yeah, so I guess we should wrap it up. The Eagles and the NFL draft goes down here. First round on Thursday. We'll be doing a watch party. Please be sure to check us out. We'll be reacting to every single pick, grading it, all the above. I've got Mark Schofield coming on Friday. If you're an Eagles fan and you want to hear our instant reaction of his thoughts and look ahead to day 2, that will be going down Friday. But before then, we'll also be doing our own pods and reacting to everything NFL draft. We've got so many mock drafts on thepainted.com. Mark, what do you want to plug?
Well, I was supposed to do a Marking Out with Mark wrestling podcast tonight, but like I said before about the Tough Cover Pod, I'm so focused on the NFL draft right now and just putting in all my research and man hours into the NFL draft. But yeah, please follow at Tough Cover Pod and at Marking Out Pod. I will be doing a Marking Out with Mark wrestling podcast next Sunday. I know I said that last week. I will be doing one next Sunday after I'm done with NFL draft, after all that stuff clears my brain. It's like how it was when I was doing the brackets when I first started with the Painted Lines. That was all that was on my brain. And right now I'm there with the NFL draft. So follow the Tough Cover Pod, follow the Marking Out with Mark Pod. There will be episodes this week after I'm kind of done with the NFL draft.
I forgot to tell you. Did you see Mankind on Pawn Stars the other week?
I did not.
Some guy walks in with a mask and a shirt of Mankind and tries to sell it. And sure enough, Mick Foley shows up. It's awesome. Check that out, man.
Oh, he's the absolute man. I love Mick Foley.
I know. All right. Make sure you follow my man, Mark, on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ Check out the Tough Cover Pod. Check out Marking Out with Mark podcast. Again, guys, Christmas Day is only a few days away. We are almost here. Check us out here the next few days. We'll be rolling out tons of draft content over the next, 72 hours. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Stay awesome, guys.
Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh, man, if he can post right, Russell Westbrook.